All right, well, happy Memorial Day, you guys. Glad you survived this week. Man, what a week for us in Oklahoma, right? When we are binge watching weather, it's never a good thing, all right? But you made it through, and I'm thankful for that. I know we have a lot of people who are newer to our state, and I'm always talking about how great Oklahoma is. This was a tough one, though, this week. It's a hard sell for our state, I know. But hey, at least you are one step closer to your degree in meteorology after this week, right? Like you now understand what hook echo means and gate-to-gate couplet and inflow notches and things like that, right? We all kind of just have our degree in that. So at least you got that going for you. Hey, if you have a Bible, go ahead and open it to where we just read from, Jonah chapter 4, where Ashley read. If you don't have a Bible, we'd love for you to grab one back there. If you're struggling to find Jonah, it's okay. You got a lot of time to do it. Don't be afraid to use the table of contents. We've been going through this short book, and we've seen now kind of 3 acts to the 4-act play of Jonah, with Act 1 being God showing up and calling a man named Jonah to arise and go and take his message of mercy to a foreign people, the Ninevites. And in the same way, God has called us to take his love to those who are not like us, right? But Jonah runs. He rebels because he's got some different idols and his identity is misplaced, we saw in chapter 1. But God pursues, right? And he chases him down, and he won't stop. He won't quit until he gets his man. He's coming after him with relentless mercy, even if that means sending a storm. He does that. In chapter 2, he sends a storm, and Jonah begins to fall down to the deep. But we see that God swallows him up in a fish, right? And we learn that sometimes God's mercy doesn't feel like mercy. It's miserable. It's pressed in. And the very thing that feels like is swallowing us is maybe God's mercy leading us to the end of ourselves, right? So we might throw our hands up, cry out to God for rescue. Maybe God's mercy is miserable, but it's mandatory. And we come out of that different, and so does Jonah. He collides with God's mercy, and it produces something in him, and he is now obedient. He goes in chapter 3 to Nineveh. It's a mercy that's now missional. I'm going to take this mercy to others, right? And we see in chapter 3 that God has caught Jonah up in his massive plan of redemption that's bigger than just a people group, bigger than just Jonah. And Jonah goes, and we see him deliver this message to a people, and astonishingly enough, like a Hollywood-level film, the whole city repents and turns to God. And it's crazy, right? Like, wow, this is incredible. God, in his mercy and power, with just a few words, is able to convert an evil, violent, wicked, rebellious city, right? People that maybe even Jonah in his own self-righteousness would consider unworthy of God's mercy, God saves. He shows up. And we read the book and we think, man, maybe it should end there, right? In fact, that's where most of the kids' books that have Jonah in them end, right there, right? Jonah's the hero. Yeah, he probably walked back to Jerusalem to a huge parade. Maybe they slapped even a Nobel Peace Prize on him, right? Global Ambassador Jonah. Yay. But rarely is chapter 4 talked about. Oh, I love the Bible, though, because the Bible doesn't just paint things polished, right? It gives us the real gritty story. It shows us the human condition. And so into that steps this startling, deep, complex layer that is chapter 4 that we're going to see today. And I'm so thankful for it. Well, chances are, if you've been tuned into the news lately at all, you've seen some protests lately. You're thinking, well, wait, which one? Well, exactly, right? Like, even maybe in the last week, we've seen protest after protest. Worldwide global protests of global warming. There's political protests in Israel, Morocco. I've seen some about education budget cuts. I've seen McDonald's employees protesting about wages. And I've seen the yellow vest protests of France. If you've heard anything about that, that's like 28 weeks now into that. There were abortion proponents picketing against pro-life legislation this week that saved babies. We had KKK protesting in Ohio this week. Just up the road around the lakes, we had people rallying to save the Great Lakes. They were protesting about that. And even in UK, we had a group known as the rebel clowns who were protesting also, because clowns have rights too, apparently. No matter what it is, right, there's something to protest, man. We're so angry, and we make a sign about it, okay? So angry. Had to make a sign. Sometimes we do more than make a sign, like the protesters in Mexico who slingshotted dirty diapers at the office of their president. Yes, diaper bombs. They said they wanted to give him back the you-know-what that he's been giving to them. So there you go. There's a creative way to do it, right? Style points for those guys. We protest a lot. And maybe you didn't see any of those. Maybe you didn't attend any of those. You've never held a picket sign. But all it takes is a few milliseconds on social media, and you're swept into the protest cesspool, right? Yeah, absolutely. A platform, a gigantic avenue for us to voice any complaints, any outrage, any outcries about things that we say are wrong. This is wrong, and I am upset about it. I want the world to know it. And with a few keystrokes, tens of people know about it, okay? That's how it works, right? And so whether you're holding a sign, whether you're making a post, or whether maybe you're even just like whispering something under your breath, we are a people of protest. But we're not alone. We're going to see today that there's a prophet of God who is a protester also, and he's protesting his God. I want us to see three things today. Why is he protesting? Why is he protesting? What it leads to, and how God responds. So Jonah chapter 4, verse 1, it's a pretty loaded sentence. But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was angry. He was angry. An entire city repents. God's mercy falls on 120,000 people. It breaks into the world, and what's Jonah's response? He's mad. He's mad. The Hebrew word here is kara, which means like to blaze, to glow, to burn. He is hot with anger. Now, this is crazy, right? Like, this is a missionary's dream. This is revival happening. Like, what musician wouldn't love getting a standing ovation at Carnegie Hall? And here we've got this prophet seeing exactly what you would hope for. Like, I just imagine, like, in heaven, Jeremiah is probably one day having a conversation with God and like, Jonah, like, seriously? I preached for 30 years and get nothing? And this joker says 5 words and a whole city repents? Everything you would dream of, and yet he's angry. What's going on here? Why? When anger happens, when we feel anger in our hearts, we got to pay attention, right? It's like a diagnostic on our dashboard. Something's going on. Something I want is not happening. It's an unmet desire. If we pay close enough attention to our anger, it'll show us what we love, actually. What does Jonah love? Well, we talked about this in chapter 1. He loves Israel. He wants the borders of Israel to be expanded. He is about his nation, right? And he wants Nineveh to pay for their violence, not receive mercy. Because God, how can you let these wicked, evil, crass people who oppose you off the hook? Now, we got to pause a little bit because I think we read the story here and we're like, man, Jonah, like we hammer Jonah for this. Like, how could a guy not want mercy for people? But we're reading through the lens of modern Western culture where we love mercy, but we can't fathom a God who will actually punish sin. But we step outside of our little bubbles and our biases, and we get into someone else's world, and they absolutely understand what Jonah is feeling right here. Here's what one man who had witnessed genocide in his own country said. It takes the quiet of a suburban home for the birth of the thesis that we should desire a God who refuses to judge. In a sun-scorched land soaked in the blood of the innocent, such an ideal will invariably die. Miroslav Volf. Let that invade our bubbles a little bit and sink in. It needs a sting a little bit. In our cush lives, for many of us in this room, who maybe haven't personally experienced depression and injustice, like we can't fathom this God who would punish sin, right? And so for Jonah to be in this place, we don't get it, but he is, and other people in other spheres of the world might absolutely understand. He is angry at this. But he's more than just angry. It says he is displeased. Which, face value, okay, he's not happy. Same thing, right? He's exceedingly displeased. So he's very, very, very unhappy. But literally in the Hebrew, you know what this says? It says, it was exceedingly evil to Jonah. But it was exceedingly evil to Jonah. In other words, what God did in showing mercy to Nineveh, Jonah says was evil. He's pointing the finger at God and saying, what you did was evil. It was wrong. It was bad, God. You see what's happening here? He's making a judgment on God. Jonah actually doesn't like who God is and what he's like. He wants a God that always punishes his enemies and always blesses him. That's what he wants, right? And in fact, that's the God he's invented in his own mind. He has created, he has fashioned a God that's not the God of the Bible, but a God of his own preferences. Here's the kind of God that I want. And when that God shows up and collides with the actual God who's revealing himself, something's got to give. And he doesn't like it. The grace of God towards the Ninevites has clashed against his will, and it's threatening Jonah's little kingdom, isn't it? He doesn't like it. He's not going to submit to God's ways and God's characters. He's going to protest. And man, as we look at that, the whole time, right? I've been holding this book up to you and going, hey, the key to this is we got to see ourselves in Jonah. We are Jonah, right? This is us. We do this. We call what God does bad or wrong. We might not voice it. We might not say it, but we feel it. We sense it. We respond that way. Even, yes, Christians, absolutely, who we profess faith in God. Yes, I follow God, but then we critique God in the details of our lives, day in and day out. And it's like 100 little paper cuts that eventually will explode in a deep-seated resentment and anger to God. Underneath all that, it's because we fashioned a God for ourselves, right? So we don't like God. We don't like his commands because they feel, what? Constraining. And we don't like God's provisions because they feel boring. And we don't like God's designs, the way he's designed marriage and sex and gender and leadership and church and community. And we don't maybe like exactly how he's structured it. We don't like his answers to our prayers. We don't like his will and his plans. Maybe we don't like how yesterday went, or maybe we just look at our whole life and we go, I don't like how this is turning out. I didn't sign up for this, God, right? I didn't want to be here with this person under this boss, living in this place, doing this, not getting to do that. I didn't choose this, God. Right? Any of you guys ever felt that, uttered that? Now, we don't have the gall to verbalize that. No, of course not. We wouldn't say that. Maybe we wouldn't even recognize that's what we're doing, but it is. Because we've kind of made God into what it is about an all kind of, we've made him into a private genie, is what we've kind of done, right? We fashioned our own God for ourselves. Rather than having the all-powerful creator who's over us, we've made a genie who's under us. That's what Jonah has done. And you say, well, Tyler, we're talking about anger here. I mean, we preach through Lamentations. Can't God handle our anger when we bring our anger to him? And I would say, yes, absolutely God's big enough to handle our anger. 100%, man. And we're going to see that today, the way he responds to it. But there's a right way and there's a wrong way to take our anger to God. The right way, as we cry out to God in the pain of our life and the loss of our life and the grief that we feel, as we bring that to him, the right way is to ultimately, at the end of all of that, lamenting, is to come under him and recognize, God, you're God and I'm not. My knowledge is limited. My wisdom is finite. My ability to determine what is good is so short-sighted. I don't see it all. So I'm going to come under your will. That's lament. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing that we would cry out to God. And at the end of that cry, place ourselves under him. But that's not what Jonah's doing. This is not lamentation, this is accusation. That's oftentimes what it looks like for us, right? He is taking the place of judge and protesting God's will. How could you do this to me? We're going to see him shaking his fist at God. And maybe we do the same. Maybe we do it to his face and we argue to him, or maybe we do it in a more passive way where we just shut off the conversation and detach from God and begin to walk away. Either way, it's protest. And so the protest begins, verse 2, with Jonah. And he prayed. He prayed. So the lava of his rage inside of his heart begins to erupt vertically to God. He prays. Have you ever prayed in anger to God? Have you ever angry prayed to God? That's what he's doing. He's angry praying to God. He's going to complain, but it's not, again, just a complaint, but it's complaining with a disdain attached to it. And he prayed to the Lord, and he said, "Oh Lord, is this not what I said when I was yet in my country?" So back to chapter 1. I wanted no part of this, God. I knew this would happen. I knew you would do this, and that's why I made haste to flee to Tarshish. And then he says, "For I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, relenting from disaster. I knew you would do this because I knew your character." And then he quotes actually Exodus 34, 6 and 7, this apex passage in the Old Testament that's quoted in the Old Testament more than any other passage, where God reveals himself to Moses. You want to know what I'm like? Here's what I'm like. I'm gracious, I'm merciful, I'm slow to anger, and I'm abounding in steadfast love. And Jonah, you can hear the belittling spite in his voice, quotes back to God God's own words. I knew you were like this. And what's the implication? And I don't like it. I knew you were like this, but I don't like it. I don't like it. Do you see the hypocrisy in Jonah throughout this story, throughout this book? Remember chapter 2? Oh, he loved the God of mercy. When he was going down into the deep and drowning, oh, please, yes, a God of mercy, that's what I need. And now that a God of mercy has shown up to his enemies, he's pointing the finger and accusing and protesting him, right? I like mercy, just mercy for me, right? That's what Jonah's doing, that's where he's at. And so Jonah has great theology. Look at his theology here. He knows who God is, right? He knows who God is. He's spot on. Like, hear me, you guys, in the Bible Belt, we need to hear this. You can memorize passages all day long. You can know scripture left and right. You can know about God and what he is like, and you cannot love him. You see that? That's Jonah right now. That's Pharisees, and that is a huge chunk of our state. This is dangerous, man. One good litmus test for us is if we read the Bible and we begin to feel more righteous or better about maybe ourselves more naturally, then there's a good chance we're misreading it, like Jonah is misreading it right here. If you know God, and I mean not just know about him, but like if you know God, if you tasted and seen his mercy, then inevitably you're going to rejoice in others experiencing his mercy too. In fact, you're going to want to run with passion to ensure that they taste and see it too, just like you did. We don't see that in Jonah, right? So verse 3 shows us there's going to be a misuse of the Bible. That's what we've seen. There's an unfounded anger in Jonah. There's a self-pity in Jonah. He's protesting God's will, and look where it brings him, to the brink of despair. Therefore now, O Lord, he ends his prayer, please take my life from me. For it's better for me to die than to live. God, just kill me. Just end it. Man, this is escalated, right? This has gone all the way. And he has no desire to go on living. Man, why? Well, because his reason for living was lost. That's why. What was his reason for living? Well, it was the national pride of Israel, being a Jew, expanding their borders, protection against their enemies. His primary identity was not being a son of God by grace, right? No, it was being a Jew by birth and works. That was his primary identity. We talked about that in chapter 1. And now that's been threatened, right? Now listen, it's okay to love your country. We're talking, it's Memorial Day. It's okay to be a patriot. I've said this before, right? We're not talking about patriotism. We're talking about nationalism, where his greatest love and his primary identity is being known in his ethnicity, in his belonging to his country, in the borders of his country expanding, in his prestige and prominence and being attached to being known as an Israelite. That was his idol. You remember in Jonah chapter 2:8, he said, those who cling to worthless idols or to empty nothings. Remember he says that? Those who do that, who chase and cling to these empty, vain idols, forsake their hope of steadfast love. See, what he's talking about there is he's going, hey, these pagans, these people don't believe in God. They have idols, and they miss out on God. But what he's missed this whole time is that he has idols too. He's missed it. Oh, you people out there who don't know God have idols that you worship. He's blind the whole time to his own idols in his heart. Maybe another way to say this, God's mercy has penetrated, but it hasn't permeated Jonah. God's mercy has invaded, but hasn't saturated, to use some of our language. Okay? He's had an experience with God's mercy in chapter 2, but it hasn't fully taken root in his life, in his heart yet, right? And so we see this relapse here in chapter 4 where he's not there. He still has things that are more foundational to his happiness than God. And do you see this? When those things collide, what is he willing to do? He's willing to discard God. I'm willing to bail on you, God. It's kind of like a dog who bites at their owner when the bone in their mouth is threatened. You take my bone, I'm going to bite back at you. We see Jonah's bone right now. It's been taken away, and now he's lost his reason to live. Which shows all along, right? His reason for living was not God. He had a different reason for living than God. It was being an Israelite. That was his reason. And so he says, kill me. What a statement. Think about that. I'd rather die than live in a world where you're God. That's in essence what Jonah is saying. I'd rather die than live in a world where you are God. And so here we go. We've kind of come to the climax now. This is what's happening in Jonah's life. We saw in chapter 1, I'm just going to recap real quick for you in some short, succinct ways. Chapter 1 was the danger that we experience when we disobey God's will. Chapter 2, the deliverance we experience when we submit to God's will. Chapter 3, the deliverance. Chapter 3, the deliverance others experience when we fulfill God's will. In chapter 4, what we're seeing happen is the depression we experience when we protest God's will. You say, whoa, depression, that's a buzzword. You threw it out there. Okay, well, in our day and age, someone would look at verse 1, 2, and 3 and absolutely diagnose Jonah with major clinical depression. He's got suicidal thoughts even. He's there. Suicidal desires. They might even look at chapter 2 and go, actually, Jonah's probably bipolar. That might be the label that's attached to him. But absolutely, it's there, right? And I want to pay attention to the escalation of all this, of the factors, the ingredients that are going on in Jonah's life and soul that have led to this level of despair. Number one, we've already seen an anger and a displeasure over what's happened in his life. He's lost something very real to him. For him, it was a misplaced thing that he's lost in his grieving, right? His national pride, his own kingdom, my will be done, my kingdom come. He's lost some of that, but it's real. He feels it, and there's anger and grief there. And with that anger and grief, ingredient number 2, he's not responding with entrusting himself to God and submitting and coming under. He's responding with objecting and protesting and challenging and questioning God, right? He's going to dig his feet in. Now, he does these two things partially, we've already said, factor number 3, because he's got a misunderstanding of God. He's really fashioned his own God for himself. And then partially because we're going to see in the rest of this, and we've seen really throughout the book, Jonah's about Jonah. Jonah has a self-focus about him. He is now fixated on his pain and his own personal agenda. All these things have happened in his life, and he is fixated on him. He is gazing inward. For many of us who maybe feel in that place of despair, and we battle depression, And we know these thoughts and these feelings and these dark places. It's the same ingredients. Here's what Dr. John Henderson says. And listen, depression is very complex. It's hard to simplify, and there's a lot of factors. But if you could boil it down in a nutshell, which is very difficult to do, that's what I'm saying. There's my qualifier. Here's how he tries to boil it down. Dr. Henderson says it this way. Depression is a self-focused heart protesting loss and pain. Depression is a self-focused heart protesting loss and pain. Now, before you shut off and you write John Henderson off and you protest that statement, I just want to remind you real quick. First of all, you probably don't know John Henderson. This is not coming from a dude who doesn't understand the darkness of this. He's battled despair and depression most of his life. And if you hear him tell his story, the waves and waves and waves of this coming over him, it will make you weep. This dude understands this and gets this, okay? There's not some high horse theologian just talking at people. He's talking from inside of this, okay? And it's also not a guy who doesn't understand relational pain and physiological factors and all the things that swirl into this. Absolutely, he understands that the body plays into this. As believers, we understand that. Absolutely. It's not just a theological problem. It's a theological problem that also has tangential effects and sometimes even factors that are rooted in our biology or in our physiology, right? Everything from genes to sleep to diet, you name it, yes. But what he's going to say, and this is the analogy he uses, right, is that, yes, our bodies can be from the passenger seat screaming at us and punching us and doing all kinds of things to complicate this level of despair. But ultimately, our heart is what has the wheel. Because what rules our heart rules our life. We're in the driver's seat, not our physiology. So, but he understands all these factors. And at the end of that, he's pointing to himself and he's going at the core of our despair. And Jonah 4 is showing it biblically so clear. And your story might be different and you've got different factors playing in. And there's maybe less of your sin involved and more of a sin against you involved and suffering involved than what Jonah's enduring. I get it. But at the core, what he's pointing out, and we need to hear this, is that self-focused response, protesting loss and pain. You may not want to hear that, but perhaps you should listen to that today. Because maybe, just like chapter 2, maybe in saying this hard thing and hearing this hard thing from John and from Jonah 4, maybe God is actually trying to set you free from the depression and the despair and the anger and the bitterness you have towards God. Maybe God lovingly is entering in, trying to break the shackles and set you free, man. Sometimes his scalpel will sting, won't it, on the way in? But man, it's always to heal. And that's what verse 4 shows us. He takes the scalpel. And the Lord said, do you do well to be angry? Now, God could have just killed Jonah, right? He prayed for him to kill him. He could have answered that prayer. I mean, this is one of those times where, like, thank God for unanswered prayers, right? But only someone in Oklahoma could write a song about that. Ryan, can you get on that? Okay, we'll work on that. Maybe next week. No, he doesn't. He doesn't crush him, right? He doesn't end the conversation and detach him. What do we see? A loving God patiently engaging Jonah. And he asks a question, man. And when God asks a question, we're reading the Bible, what do we got to do? We got to lean in. This is God. He knows the answer. He's asking a question not for him, but for us. He wants to reveal something in our hearts. He's lovingly drawing Jonah out. With just 3 words in the Hebrew, the wonderful counselor begins to diagnose the root. Do you do well to be angry? There's 2 ways to take this. The first way to take it is, how's it going for you? How's that anger working out for you? Is it leading to more health in your life and joy in your life and peace in your life and hope in your life? How's that track working out for you? Oh, you'd like to end your life? Okay, so it's not working out very well, is it? So there's a little bit of a counselor move in that. But probably what is more meant by this is more so, do you have the right to be angry? That's a little bit more probably what the Hebrew is getting at. Do you have the right to be angry? So God's diagnosing it not just as an anger problem, but as an authority problem. Do you have the right, Jonah, to be angry? He's pressing on Jonah's self-authority. You feel that you can call the shots, can't you? And you can tell me how to run the planet with all your great ideas and your total wisdom and infinite understanding. You know what is best, don't you, Jonah? No. Do you have the right to be angry? What a question. What a question. Well, Jonah, what's his answer? Verse 5, he doesn't have an answer. It's nothing, right? He walks out of the conversation. He leaves the city, and he sat to the east of the city to make a booth for himself there. He sat under it in the shade till he should see what would become of the city. He's going to set up shop. So he builds himself a little lean-to out of clay. He's going to throw down the lawn chair, post up, and wait for the fireworks to happen. Maybe God will actually punish the city. Well, we've got 120,000 people who just believed in God. Where should he be? Probably in the city making disciples, okay? There's a lot of church planting work that needs to be done now, okay? And I'm guessing they're going to like him, okay? He'll probably find a pretty swank place to live. I'm guessing he's not going to go hungry. But what does he do? No, he's actually going to go outside the city, holding out hope that God's still going to rain down some fire on the city. Man, we see now, chapter 3 is really revealed. Jonah's obedience to go to Nineveh was really an act of begrudging submission. It was not joyful obedience, was it? It was begrudging obedience. He doesn't have love and concern for these people, but God does, and he's going to pursue Jonah. Verse 6, now the Lord, God appointed a plant and made it come up over Jonah, that it might be a shade over his head to save him from his discomfort. So we see here is God's going to move in now with a bit of an object lesson. The teacher's going to step in. Man, God is so relentless, right? He won't quit. He won't stop. He'll chase down his prodigals. He'll chase down his Pharisees. And so God moves closer to Jonah, and he appoints this plant. He supernaturally causes this plant to grow up in a day with big leaves that provides shade and material comfort for Jonah. And what's Jonah's response? He was exceedingly glad. Super happy over the shade, man. When you're in that bitter place of despair and anger, it doesn't take much to make you happy, does it? That's all it took, a little shade. And we could probably hear the self-pity come out of Jonah. Oh, it's about time, right? As that plant pops up. Finally, something going my way. We get to see a little bit about what makes him tick, right? This exceedingly glad, it is unusually strong language in the Hebrew. He is very, very, very happy. You might even say he loves the plants. And he is attached to comfort, right? Because he was saved from discomfort, and he loves it. See, when our focus is on creation rather than creator, we've attached ourselves to our world, our kingdom, our comfort. It doesn't take much to make our day. Circumstances change, our day is made. But verse 7 comes, circumstances change, doesn't take much to ruin our day either. Verse 7. But when dawn came up the next day, one day later, God appointed a worm that attacked the plant, which is crazy, by the way. I've never heard of attacking worms. I don't know, man. If you've heard of those, I want to see these suckers. Haven't seen them yet on Discovery Channel or Wildcrafts. Still waiting on that one. Attacking worms. So that this plant withered. God gives in a day, he takes it out in a day. And then verse 8, when the sun rose, God appointed a scorching east wind. Same day, the sun beat down on the head of Jonah so that he was faint. This is probably the dreaded Scirocco wind of the Arab desert that was just like sticking your face in front of a blow dryer just all day. Like just an oven blasting at you with all the sand, pounding you, and the sun's beating down on him so that it makes him faint. And what does he say again? It's better for me to die than live. And he asks God to die. He repeats it, right? And it's heat exhaustion, man. And this is when depression is the worst, when you go back in. You think you finally come out of it. Things are going well. There's an uptick in my life, and I'm back in there, and the despair gets worse, man. God lovingly engages Jonah as he's sulking about his misfortune. God responds with the same line. Look how he approaches him. God said to Jonah, verse 9, do you do well to be angry? There it is again. Do you have the right to be angry? And yeah, it's for the plants. He's beginning to tie it all together. Jonah this time, though, man, he can't help but reply to God, right? Okay, since you're asking again, let's do this. And in his obstinate blindness, man, he doubles down. Yes, God, I do well to be angry. Angry enough to die. Look what happened, God. Of course I'm angry. Look at my life. Look what you've done to me. This isn't fair. You bet I'm angry. And in so doing, in saying, he implicates himself. Verse 10, God brings it home. And the Lord said, you pity the plants, for which you didn't labor, nor did you make it grow. In other words, it was a gift of grace. You didn't earn this shade. You didn't do a thing for this shade. It was a gift from me. And when it perished in a day, you pitied it. The word literally is like compassion, or maybe another way to phrase it, it's a merciful care. You care about something so much that you want to show it mercy. You want mercy for the plant. He loved the plant. He was attached to the plant. Right? Then God ends. And shouldn't I pity Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 people who don't know their right hand from their left, and also much cattle. See what God just did? You weep over plants. I weep over people. See what you care about, Jonah? You see what you love, Jonah? You love you. And so he even throws in that little jab about cattle, right? Like, there's plants, and there's animals, and then there's people. Like, you're caring about the lowest, most inconsequential thing. I care about souls. I want mercy for them. People. And this is not a slam on Nineveh. He says that they don't know their right hand from the left. This is not like you and I would be like, yeah, serves them right, these ignorant fools, right? Like, he's not slamming them. He's not demonizing or mocking someone who's different. This is actually an incredibly compassionate thing to say. He's saying these are people who need a guide. They need a guide. They don't know where they're going or what the problem is. They need someone to step in and help them. This is intense compassion. We have a God that sees us in our sad situation, and he feels sad for us. He remembers our frame. He knows that we are but dust. He doesn't look at us and say, you idiots, get your act together. He moves close to us. He's stirred on the inside. This is a deep, affectionate word. God is affectionate towards you with compassion. Verse 11 is God saying, I, the Almighty God, have voluntarily attached myself to sinful, wicked, finite, created, rebellious people. I've opened myself up to the pain of loving them so that my heart burns with zeal over them and actually grieves when I lose one of them. And then he ends, it's a question, right? It's a question. His question is, sent in essence to Jonah, shouldn't you join me? That's the piercing final question of the book. Shouldn't you join me in that kind of mercy towards people, in that kind of love towards people? Jonah has no good answer, does he? It's chapter 5. No chapter 5, right? It's crazy. The book ends in the biggest cliffhanger. I don't know another book of the Bible that ends with such a cliffhanger. Literally a question mark. What happened? Did Jonah repent? Did he stay in Nineveh? Come on, man. This is like that moment where you're in the theater and you're like, seriously? You're just stuck in your chair. Like, I can't even get up. I'm just shaking my head. What happened? It's actually literary brilliance what's going on here. There's a purpose in ending the book like this. And the purpose is so that we would insert ourselves into the story and begin to examine our hearts as we finish the book. See, the whole book has been setting us up this whole time. It's a setup. We chapter by chapter begin to point the finger at Jonah. How can this schmuck who claims to follow God do this and this and this? I am way better than him. And as we're firing the arrow at Jonah at the end of the book, it's like the book fades out and the fog lifts and all we see is a mirror. Oh, that's me. Oof. I do this to God. I definitely do this to my enemies. And I even do this to my neighbors. People are like me. So as we get ready to respond, church, and sing, Ryan comes back up, I really just want to ask you one major question today, and really it's a question for the whole book, and it's, where are you in the story of Jonah? Are you in chapter 1? Are you running from God? God's called you in to love people, to take his gospel. He's laid out life for you, but man, you're caught up in your own life and identity. You don't want to venture into something that's uncomfortable, and so you're kind of ignoring his voice. Are you in chapter 2? Are you maybe in the process of being saved, but man, it's miserable. You don't like it, and you're being brought to the end of yourself. You're in a fish. It's pressing in on you. Maybe you're in chapter 3. Maybe you're obeying God. You're doing the right things. You're moral. You're religious. But man, there's no love and joy in it. You're doing out of duty and obligation. Maybe you're chapter 4. You've come full tilt to being angry and bitter at God. You're protesting how life has panned out and his plans and his will and what he's liked. You fashion maybe even a little makeshift God of your own. You haven't joined the real God on his mission. Or maybe, just maybe, you're at where I think Jonah ends up eventually, church. I think Jonah eventually submits to God. And perhaps it was right there in the desert dust outside of Nineveh. Perhaps it was on a long and lonely journey back to Jerusalem. Perhaps it was years of bitterness and self-pity later. But at some point, I think Jonah put his identity in God alone. He came to yield to the God of mercy, to enjoy that mercy, and to be on mission to take that to others. Now, how can you say that, Tyler? That is some amazing conjecture you're reading into the scriptures. Well, I could be wrong. But how else do we know the story? Maybe God divinely downloaded it to somebody. He can do that. Who didn't know and never met Jonah, and he wrote it all down. Could have happened. Or maybe Jonah shared it. Maybe Jonah told his story. Maybe the man who was so caught up with his own life and preoccupied with his life being good and his prestige and everything being good about him, and he can't be seen in a negative light, or he can't have things go wrong. Maybe that dude became finally secure in the Lord's love for him and put his identity in the God of mercy so much that he was willing to be seen in his failures and his flaws, that he couldn't help but began to take this message of mercy to others and to share his own story. I think that's what happened. He knew it, he felt it, and eventually he loved it. That's not the main point of the book. The main point of the book is the main character of the book is God. And wherever you're at, church, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in between 4 and maybe where Jonah eventually got, wherever you're at, there's a patient God who's willing to walk with you. Sometimes he'll send storms your way. Sometimes he'll send fish your way. Sometimes he'll just gently step in a conversation like a counselor and begin to probe your heart. But he's tender in it, and he's persistent in it. Jonah shows us something about God, that he is relentless in mercy. He will not stop. He will not quit. He won't give up on you. He will continue to come after you, church. And thank God for that. He's determined to rescue you. Psalm 23:6. You know Psalm 23 maybe. Surely his goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. That word follow, probably better translated pursue. It's a really intense word. Surely his mercy will hunt me down all the days of my life. Oh yeah, he will. What kind of God is like this, y'all? What kind of God avalanches you with mercy like this? He won't stop with mercy wherever you're at today, running, drowning, miserable in a fish, empty religious obedience, depression, anger, protesting. God is saying to you today, you cannot outrun my mercy. And you cannot out-sin my mercy. I'm relentless. So let's receive it, church. Let's rest in that mercy, and then let's champion it and take it to a world who so desperately needs it, just like us. We're going to sing in just a minute. And when we do, I want to invite you, if you've trusted in Jesus for this mercy and you've understood and experienced this mercy, you get a chance to really, in a very tangible way, experience it and remind yourselves of it today by coming up, grabbing the bread out of the bowl, dipping it into the cup. And what this is saying is it's just reminding us that this God of mercy shows up in human form in the New Testament, right? That we have a face now attached to this kind of compassion. A man who saw a crowd and saw them as helpless, like sheep without a shepherd, and was stirred on the very inside of his body with love for them. Man, he's full of mercy. Mercy towards Jews, mercy towards Samaritans, mercy towards Greeks, right? Mercy towards lepers and lawyers and foreign occupying soldiers and prostitutes, tax collectors, beggars, overlooked children, insecure governors, savage mobs, stumbling disciples, denying friends. This is the God of mercy. And when this God enters into the city of Jerusalem riding on a donkey, he weeps over it. He knows his final days are coming. He knows the message he's going to take to the city will end in his murder. But he's not so self-absorbed that he's filled with anger or self-pity. No. All he's focused on is us. He delivers that message. He's the prophet that Jonah should have been, but he doesn't just stop there with weeping over the city in utter love. He's on the doorstep of despair the night of his own death, right? And he doesn't protest God's will. He says, not my will, but yours be done. He submits to it. Then he walks out of the city, not seeking his own comfort, but suffering in agony. And not waiting to witness the destruction of the city, but actually absorbing it on himself. That's our Jesus. Let's pray to him. Let's sing to him together, church. Father, we thank you right now. Thank you for what you've done in Jesus, that you have shown up and met us with an unstoppable mercy. God, we need it because we look at Jonah. We're the people of chapter 1 running from you. We're the people of chapter 2 that need to be rescued. We're the people of chapter 3 who sometimes go through the motions and just obey you out of begrudging submission instead of joy and love for people. Man, we're the people of chapter 4 who sometimes turn on you and look inward, fashion our own counterfeit God and version of you, rather than joining you on your mission. And so, God, today, and we want to repent, and then we want to feel and experience your mercy on us right now. Thank you. You're not calling us idiots. You're not turning your back on us. You're drawing near to us with patience in our protests. Thank you for that kind of mercy. We want to sing about that right now in Jesus' name. Amen.